Hold on tight for the next hour. You're entering into a place, a zone called the alternative to the alternative media. It's a place, a special place where even truth seekers fear to tread.
All right, people, let's move like we've got a purpose.
Affirmative.
Okay, we're back again on Tuesday for the Investigative Journal. Greg Anthony here. Hope you're having a good day in spite of everything else going on in the world. And yesterday on my show, we dealt with a subject that many may just look at and laugh. And I would say most people. Others who maybe have woke up just a little bit to the truth are saying, well, it could be true. And then those of you who have been at it for a long time saying this, I don't believe a word that comes out of anything from the pulpits in America or the White House or government officials. You may say, I am sure. I know why. These Hollywood A-list actors wear dresses and are presenting this picture of transgenders, homosexuality, anything goes environment as the new normal. However, what we said yesterday, the question I want to ask before, we got a lot to talk about today because I'm going to extend this discussion. We're going to move a little bit away from Hollywood, then into the White House. Talk about America's most beloved couple, Barack Hussein Obama and Michelle Obama. And I think you're going to see a connection here between what goes on in Hollywood and what goes on at the highest levels of American politics. And I'm sure it goes on in France too. And the reason I say that is because there are stories out there that Macron, the head of France, is gay. Not that there's anything wrong with it. But let's look at why, first, people will believe lies coming from the highest positions in both the clergy and American politics. And the reason they believe them is that that's what they get a steady diet of the wrong information. And basically, not only wrong information about practical things, but I'm talking about spiritual things. I'm talking about morality. I'm talking about what is considered right and wrong anymore. And they have a tendency to believe the only messages they get. Now, is there anything wrong with that? No. What I think we have to understand is about 99% of the world's population is living in the dark when it comes to this kind of information. I don't care what country you go to. I don't care who you talk to. You're going to have to evaluate this on one. Please understand that most people have not woken up, have not awakened to the truth that's going on behind them, how they've been lied and deceived their whole life. And on this show a long time ago I mentioned that the one thing you really have to do is question, one, the religion or faith you were brought up in, two, the political system and the country you were brought up in, and then extend those tentacles out to other countries and other religions and other faiths. Because if you don't do that, if you don't question the veracity of what's coming from the pulpits and from your political leaders, and i.e. your media, then you're going to end up taking all of this information to the grave, not really understanding how you've been lied to. And what better way for the elite to pull one over on you, right? That's why they call you useless eaters. That's why they call us the people who are just living on America, useless eaters, as Henry Kissinger said. And of course, we understand there's a small club, or maybe you don't. But if you get to a point where you start waking up, seeing these lies, you start understanding that there's a little club and you're not in it. Now, we've said a long time ago that the people in power basically are your owners. They own you. Now, we're going to look at it differently because every person, if I say that, your owners control you, people who are in the dark aren't going to believe it. So let's look at it from their point of view. They believe that what's been passed down through the ages, whether they're born Catholic, Protestant, what have you, Buddhist, Hindu, that you're getting the truth coming out of the Vatican and all these other high-level religions. So they understand. So why wouldn't they believe it? And the same goes with politics. And let's just center on American politics. Now, of course, people in this country grow up with the idea that they have the right to dissent, they have the right to believe in their political views, and they'll say many, many times, whoa, we're so lucky. And that's where they're coming from. So they're either believing a message coming from the left, coming from the right, or somewhere in the middle or somewhere on the extreme edges. And they still believe in the system. They believe that the people in power are telling them the truth about, one, the system they live in, how their system was established, and two, their own personal life. And so we have to look at it that way. Then how is that reinforced in this country or in the world? Through the media. And we've seen over the years that people like to listen to the talking heads on TV. Turn on the tube, believe every word they say. And you can understand why, because these people are paid a lot of money. They're considered to be the most intelligent people in the world, all of the pundits that come out. And they basically are pushing this agenda that believe your leaders, believe your church, believe the Pope, believe everything we tell you. But what happened? Well, in the old days before the internet, there were pockets of people who didn't believe it, and so they would send out little journals, they'd send out papers, they'd do things, and there were always, in the power elite understand that there are people who will figure it out. But if they can keep those people to a not a critical mass, they have no problem. And they're labeled tinfoil, they wear tinfoil hats, they're crazy, don't listen to what they're saying, and so they're marginalized. And this was even before the internet. But think about it. With the spread of the internet, we have this so-called alternative media. And this alternative media is supposed to be giving you the truth. So you get now, after maybe, 20 years of this, you have these people who started out in the alternative media, took the lead, and guess what? People believe what they're told through the alternative media by the people who supposedly have the biggest stations, the most publicity, and guess who that is? So when we talk about the alternative media, we talk about InfoWars and Alex Jones. Now, many people believe his words, think he's a truth seeker. And I can understand why. Because he has the biggest station, he's been criticized the most by, guess who? The mainstream media, by the politicians, by everybody. In fact, he's mainstream almost now, right? You hear about him on Fox. Oh, did you hear what that tinfoil hat said, Alex Jones? Did you hear that Chelsea Clinton even mentioned him when he said some things? Did you hear that everybody in politics said when he told us that Michelle Obama was a man and Barack Obama was gay, oh, he's crazy. And so everybody else, no matter what kind of evidence was given, was put into that category. So I understand, and you have to understand that many people in the alternative understand that. Okay, but let's say we want to look at it differently, right? Let's say we want to look at the story from a different angle. Okay, let's look at this from another angle, and we're going to look at everything from a different angle, understanding that if you're a person that's in the dark. I like to say in the dark because you're still not, you're so, brainwashed is a good way to put it, and I don't blame it. I was brainwashed too for many years. And luckily, as a journalist, I had a questioning mind. Not a very smart mind, but a questioning mind. And I usually didn't believe anything I heard after a little bit, but I didn't realize it went this deep. So I was just like many of you people in the dark today. Yes, many. So like I said, I understand that most people are still not able to really comprehend these things. And I don't think it's intelligence. I think it's basically just saying, wow, how can you believe this stuff? I got to find some other way. But you see what happens, it's a progression. Just because one day you wake up and you say, well, I don't believe the Pope, a word the Pope comes out of his mouth because of, this big scandal, that's just the beginning of it. Because what happens, it's kind of like when you understand that when you grew up, you believed, if you grew up like me as a kid, and when they first said they landed on the moon, I believed it hook, line, and sinker. And then when I understood that, wow, I got to question this, and then I realized that there's a good possibility we didn't go to the moon. Let's look at it. I said, wow. But then I said, is there more here? There might be a good possibility that the earth isn't even the shape they tell us. So you go a little farther. It's a progression constantly. And so today we're going to turn the tables a little bit on all this stuff. But I do want to get back to Alex Jones. So many people, hundreds of thousands, millions of people, believe that he is like the vanguard of all these truths that have been, all these lies that have been told us. He takes the center stage on all this stuff. So we have to understand that many people believe that he is the top dog when it comes to truth-seeking, right? But let's look at it differently. Let's just focus on him a minute. Then we're going to get back to why these Hollywood actors dress up in dresses, why the pedophile rings are now being talked about all over the place with Pizzagate in Washington, with all these people now putting out tweets like Tom Hanks and others. Now we know Harvey Weinstein is going to be facing some charges in court. He's the money man in Hollywood. Then we hear about Steven Spielberg, Tom Hanks, and all these others now being accused of being pedophiles. Now we're going to look at all of it from a different angle, as we did yesterday a little bit. We looked at it from both sides, understanding that many people believe that these guys in Hollywood are just, having fun. They dress up like this because it's all a joke, and there's nothing more than that. So most people believe that. But once you start getting out of the fog, you start seeing, well, maybe it could be different. So we're going to go back to all of that and extend it out to Obama. We're going to extend it out to Washington, what's going on, to Michelle Obama, and talk a little bit about some of the scandals that Obama was involved in. Okay, we're going to look at everything from two sides, and I think it's really important, and I think as a person, you too, if you're out there, because you've been barraged with all this information over the years now, especially since the internet and 9/11, it's important to do that, because otherwise you're going to make a big mistake. Because if you've gotten to a point where you're like me, you're going to be labeled a crazy tinfoil hat, just like the rest of us, the rest of people that are. Now, the mainstream, of course, labels Alex Jones as a tinfoil hat, and he gets a lot of press all over the place. And so if you follow in his footsteps with a lot of different things, even now, he'll come out and say that there's evil in the Vatican, and he'll mention, though, that there's good and there's evil. But I remember the day he didn't. But let's look at, if Alex Jones, look at it from a different point of view, has been placed in the internet because they realized people were going to start getting their information there. So they had to put somebody there to control the information, and also find a person who can gather millions and then they'll realize that they can label all of these people as nuts, and they'll use Alex Jones to benefit. And he understands that. Guy's made millions off this, I suppose. And I knew him when he might have been in the background, but I knew him in the beginning days. And I had a radio show right after his. He came out of Austin, Texas. The show was on Genesis. I still think he's there. That station used to be from Minnesota, and I was broadcasting on that station as well. And I was one of the few started really concentrating on the Vatican, which was a no-no. So I have some personal information on this. So when I say let's look at the point of view, whether Alex Jones has been placed there, many will say yes, but still many more won't believe that. They'll say that anybody that criticizes Alex Jones is a gatekeeper, when in fact Jones could be is the gatekeeper from my perspective, from where I come from. So I had to deal with that. And so we have to look at it from that issue. So when we talk about Alex Jones, we have to look at him from 2 points of view. And then you have to gather facts, watch what he does, look at who he hangs out with, talk about him, and then decide whether, hey, what is the reason he's really there? How's he become so popular? And who really is he? Many will say he's Alex Jones. Others will say, if you get to know him, he's really Bill Hicks. And they remember Bill Hicks was a comic, he was out in the forefront years ago. Then he supposedly died from some illness at a very young age. And many have drawn the conclusion that Alex Jones, or Bill Hicks, was morphed into Alex Jones. And it's something that you really have to think about. Now, many are going to call you crazy for that. So look at it as a progressive thing that you do in your research, because you really want to kind of know where you get this information on the internet, right? But if you look at Alex Jones, many of the stories that we talk about, let me concentrate on the Vatican for a minute here. And this is a show I'm probably going to have to do a couple more days, because we're dealing with a lot, not only just these stories, but how people react to these stories, what they really believe inside. And I would bet that even if you're a professed truth seeker, that you have doubts about anything that I'm going to say in these shows. And that's good, because it should say, well, maybe I need to look at it more. But let's look at what the other people say. And that's the way you progress. And then pretty soon you come up with your own conclusion. And you don't go to the grave believing 100% were the lies that have been told you your whole life. And that is my only regret. I've met so many intelligent people that are in the dark over this stuff. And I just sit there and they go, someday they're just going to leave here. And how are they ever going to, then you get into the religious discussions. And we don't want to do that today. So when you look at all these stories, look at where it's coming from. The mainstream, when you say that, let me look at my show yesterday, that A-list actors dress up in drag because that's a rite of initiation into this kind of sexual occult they all belong to in Hollywood, the mainstream's going to call you crazy. Now, Alex Jones will say the same thing. He'll say things like, these guys are all pedophiles, and Michelle Obama's a tranny, Michelle Obama's gay, and so then he is criticized heavily by the mainstream, and so everybody underneath is criticized the same. So we have to understand that if you believe Alex Jones, there's a lot of things that he says that are basically perhaps things you ought to research, but once you do that, he's doing it for a reason, and that is to categorize you as crazy. And he's taking the forefront, making all the money, because he's been possibly bought and paid for by the very people that we are talking about here. Now, nothing gives me more pleasure than to try to decide this And I do it in a very kind of a litmus test using the Vatican. Now, in my early days on the radio, I had a show, like I said, on Genesis right after his. I also had one on Republic Broadcasting, which is a similar, like a sister. They're like two sisters working for the same evil enemy that we consider, and you think of them as, and I'm convinced of it because I worked with these people, and there's so many questions that I didn't realize when I started that came to light. But one of them is if you start back 10, 15 years ago, if you started talking like the Vatican like we did, you were ostracized by these people. They would not allow you to broadcast. They would call you crazy. Alex Jones would say that about me. And basically, he did not, at those days, he used to say that the Vatican were just these good priests and anybody who talks against them is crazy. So, I mean, that's just a small, I'm just kind of summarizing it. But over the years now, he's moved into this kind of, we'll criticize the Vatican too, but in this regard, we'll say that the evil Jesuit Pope is there. And there's an evil that's trying to take over this beautiful church. And so basically, he is kind of giving you half-truths. But he's moved into that realm. So he then takes on the criticism from the mainstream. Look what Alex Jones is saying about the Pope. And then anybody who talks about the Pope might as well put on their tinfoil hat, according to the mainstream media. So that's what we're dealing with. And that's how I have come to the conclusion. Now, my conclusions come from two things. One, some personal experience. One, about the Vatican, having worked in Rome when I was younger, and learning the story that really upset me. I wish it wasn't that way, but it is, according to me. Then, as I came here and got to know some of the top people on the internet, when it first started to really blossom into this, I remember there wasn't any YouTube people around. There were a few stations, and now it's like blossomed into everybody's become a journalist. Now that's good and bad, but it also is ripe for who are you going to believe? And so, let me give you a quick example. When I was first starting this, and Alex Jones used to criticize me heavily, I was living in a small town, and what happened was I was walking through the library one day, and one of the people in this town of maybe 2,000 or 3,000 said, "Hey, are you Greg Szymanski from the Investigative Journal?" "Yeah." "Look at what Alex Jones is saying here." You know what this guy labeled me? And word got around town. Not that people would believe it. Most people didn't because they don't believe any. But the tinfoil hat people who were looking for the truth, they believed Alex Jones. And so, the rumor started through Alex Jones and his minions that I was a CIA operative. They even named my military handler, and that I was spreading false information and I should be watched. Now, guess what? This guy believed Alex Jones and not me. Why? Because he was at a progression in his searching for the truth where that made sense to him. And I can understand that, because Alex Jones was much bigger than me, had much more publicity, had much more, exposure. So I understand that. My only hope is now that this guy's progressed to the point where he understands that he was wrong. And I don't know, but I hope that happened, because the idea that the internet is a place where everybody gets the truth is crazy, because the powers that be knew they had to control it. I believe they use Alex Jones. Back in 3 minutes on the Investigative Journal.
The program you are listening to is 100% sponsored by you, the listener, on this First Amendment Rights Media channel. You will notice that there are few commercials on this radio network. There's a good reason for that. Corporate advertising dollars come with strings that limit program content. So without your help, these programs cannot continue on internet or our several affiliates. If you benefit by the educational law programs, we ask you to give. If you are admonished or nurtured by the Bible and ministry programs, we ask you to give. If some voice a cause that you are passionate about, we ask you to give. If you believe in any of these, we ask you to support them as you would a missionary on a continual basis, as if giving a tithe for missionary radio. These programs are not commercially viable and must be supported by those faithful to the cause of truth. Look for the button to sponsor your favorite programs at our listen and schedule pages on the internet. Then, when you subscribe, we will send you the last quarterly MP3 CD of that program immediately, and continue to do so with each new quarter. We will also give you unlimited archive access to all of our programs. We're asking you to give much less than a tithe, so that you may also send support directly to a particular program host, cause, and anywhere else the Spirit may lead you. Do all to the glory of our God and Creator, for His holy nation, the only kingdom that will last forever. Thank you for listening.
Visit crosstheborder.org, CROSS, crosstheborder.org, to get your print, EPUB, or PDF version of Nicholas Arthur's new book titled When the Third Temple is Built. That's crosstheborder.org. When it comes to prophecy today, much of the evangelical Christian world has their eyes on Israel, waiting and watching to see when the third temple will begin to be built. The plans are drawn, the Jewish people are eager. Most evangelical Christians today believe that the rapture will happen before the third temple is built. Hi, I'm Michael Eugene. I was taught that Daniel's 70th week was in the future. Is that really what the Bible teaches? Have we searched the scriptures and found this to be true? Why is it so important for a re-established Israel to build a third temple in Jerusalem? Is it necessary to build a temple on the same location already occupied by the Dome of the Rock? Is it necessary for sacrifices to take place in the temple on Temple Mount? Is there really a rapture followed by 7 years of tribulation? What is the New Testament temple? Can we identify history and prophecy? Who is the first beast in Revelation chapter 13? Who are the 7 kings in Revelation 17? I have asked all these questions, and I have found Nicholas Arthur's new book, When the Third Temple is Built, answers all these questions and more using Scripture to interpret Scripture. The Bible says that no prophecy of Scripture is of any private interpretation. Nicholas shows us in his new book, When the Third Temple is Built, how the Bible interprets prophecy and not man's private interpretation. Visit crosstheborder.org, CROSS, crosstheborder.org, to get your print, EPUB, or PDF version of Nicholas Arthur's new book titled When the Third Temple is Built. That's crosstheborder.org.
The following program is labeled dangerous and off limits by the supreme Jesuit command. But stand tall, people. Listen up, and you may just learn something.
Oh, dear Lord Jesus, this ain't happening, man. This can't be happening, man. This isn't happening.
Okay, we're back for the second half hour this Tuesday, and boy, what a web of controversy, what a web we weave when we first learn to deceive. All those words, come ring true when you're trying to really figure out what's going on in the world today. And all the information at your disposal, I'm trying to help you look at it from both points of view so that you can make up your own mind about it. And I realize that many people don't like to do that. What they like to do is draw conclusions before they have a lot of evidence. Now, I'm not saying you're ever going to get all the evidence, like we do on this show, trying to go back hundreds of years to piece together history regarding our country, history regarding the religion you may have been brought up in, the things that have happened in the past. So it's a difficult journey, but one that's well worth it. Because during that journey, you grow as a person, and you have a tendency to understand the most important thing in life, I think. And Moni, you can disagree with that as well, but don't draw conclusions before you have a lot of evidence. And even when you think you have all the evidence, don't be hung up on your conclusion, because that may very well change as well. And that can be involved in your religious activity. It can be involved in political activity, social activity. And when we're talking about morality, this is what they're doing to you. They're creating a new normal. And you may believe this new normal is right, or you may adhere to a stricter code of morality that understands the respect between a man and a woman, the differences between a man and a woman, the understanding that a child should not be placed into a position of bondage, of sexual depravity. And what's happening is there's a whole group of people, and most of them happen to be, people that are coming from Hollywood, even the top levels of governments and business, that want to change that morality, want to make it seem that all of this stuff, this sexual deviantness that we talked about yesterday, why Hollywood actors, half the A-list actors, have to dress up as a woman somewhere along their career. Is it a rite of initiation? Then we looked at the possibilities of the good of Freemasonry, the bad of Freemasonry, the secret societies and their cults and how they influence what you're seeing on TV, what you're reading in the newspapers, and also how they influence what's coming from the clergy and the pulpits. And so it's a mess that you have to figure out, but it's always important to understand both sides. So as we move, go to my show yesterday regarding why how A-list actors have to dress up as women, and then you're going to see women playing men, etc., along their career, and what really goes on behind the scenes. But also look at how the mainstream and how most people in America look at it to get your perspective. Okay, so we're going to move away from Hollywood, Tom Hanks, Spielberg, the rest of the boys, and move into the White House. And I don't want to talk about Trump today, but I do because we forget about Barack Hussein Obama. And the reason I say that is that I was reading a number of articles, and he and Michelle are considered to be the most revered couple in America. Okay, so we know right off the bat that he was the first black president. His wife, Michelle, when we're going to consider her as his wife, Michelle, consider her to be an intelligent lawyer. And when they came into the White House, all of their progressive ideas, the first black president, the first black couple. And it was almost as if America had taken a new step to erase its slave and white culture history. And there's nothing wrong with a black president or a white president, but is he really who he says he is? And what was he really doing in office? I mean, when you look at some of his policies, now many people to this day overlook a lot of his policies, and even if you can say, for example, let me give you an idea of one. Many people here, not a lot of people in America, and why I understand it, because they believe in him as the new black hope, etc., etc. This beautiful black family gets into office. America seeing its first black president. But when you ask the question, why did he give $150 million or $1 billion to Iran, and he allowed this Iranian deal? I mean, do you understand what he was really doing? It was in cash, and he did this without Congress, and then they entered into some bogus agreement with Iran that they were going to curtail their nuclear weapons when they haven't. It's not even sanctioned. I mean, it's something he did on his own, and nobody questions it. I mean, I could think of things that went on in Libya, and we know the story of the Libyan or the ambassador there being killed, and what happened during Benghazi. I mean, these are just glaring things that I don't care if you're black or white. How can he still be considered this great black hope when you start looking at his policies, and one after the other is basically a sellout of the United States in favor of either the Muslim culture, or in favor of terrorist groups, in favor of policies that make your head spin when it comes to foreign policy. America was looked at as this country that was always apologizing for what it did in the past. And Obama was that spokesman. And still to this day, he is considered, and Michelle are considered, the most adored couple in this country. And let's just say that from the perspective of most people, that's who he is. And his policies, okay, if they were a little skewed, they were done for the better good of the world. And it fits in with a lot of people's ideas about globalism and this hatred towards American policies. Okay, so we know that this is the most revered man in the world. Okay? And he still has a huge following. Michelle still has a huge following. And in fact, many people still consider them to be the president and the first lady, and they look at Trump and his wife as rogues in office. So we have that group out there. And I don't want to get into then the half of the group that thinks Obama's bad and Trump is good, but we have that perception. So let's stick with Obama and talk about two of the main things that deflect his character. Maybe saying he isn't really who he says he is. First of all, there's the idea that Obama usurped the Constitution because he wasn't even an American citizen. Now, on the alternative media, Alex Jones, of course, took the lead and started presenting information that he wasn't an American citizen, and there's a lot of information out there that states he was born in Kenya. All of the records from Hawaii and that, his birth certificate doesn't make sense. And when we moved to the mainstream, there was a sheriff out of Arizona named Sheriff Joe Arpaio that spent a lot of money and effort to prove this. And he came up with, if you go to his information and the private investigators that he hired, wow. There's a good possibility that he was not born in this country, which means that he's ineligible to be president. So why would the powers that be do that? We'll get into that later. It's important on you looking at this and saying, am I going to go far enough to believe this? Now, who in the mainstream believed that maybe he wasn't born here? Well, of course, Trump is criticized to this day for being a birther. He came out and stated that. He's gone back on it now. Then we have Sheriff Joe. And we have this mainstream Fox News, who's a Trump supporter through and through, on the left, on the right, who don't touch this story with a 10-foot pole. So, who touches it in the alternative? I said Alex Jones takes the lead on it. He takes the heat from the mainstream. And everybody underneath gets labeled as a tinfoil hat. But when you start looking at some of the information, and I'm not going to go through it right here, maybe I'll talk a little bit. Well, here's a quote from Obama. 3 years ago, he said, Obama's quote, "I visited Kenya as the first sitting president to come from Kenya." Okay, what does that mean? And while many people are now still waiting on indictments, whether it be on Trump or Clinton, which will never come, these people are all embedded into this elite system. It's all here to snow you over. Now, that's if you get to this point, if you've progressed enough to see the lies. But if you're not, you're going to believe, well, there's a hope Clinton still can be indicted. There's a hope Trump will get pushed out. So, but they forget about Obama. He's gone. And he transgressed the United States Constitution by, according to some people, 1,180 times. And if you go to that article, just Obama transgressed the United States 1,180 times. Just read it for yourself. Now, I pointed the finger at Obama as a foreigner, not born here, and ineligible for the presidency of the United States. He was called the CIA-controlled media. today's conservatives, yesterday's lawless liberals, and the professed Christians, a conspiracy theorist, or a birther. So you're labeled under, and Alex Jones takes the lead on the alternative, right? Names, of course, were used to demean and discredit anyone and everyone that dared call out the obvious. And it is obvious once you start looking at this, or at least it should be on the table. But, but the reason is that no one really, if you haven't gotten to a point, you can't deal with this yourself. Oh, no one could become a president in America that is not born here. Well, there's a lot of evidence that Obama did it. Okay? Now, his history, you're going to have to do this yourself. There's so much out there about the good side of Barack Obama, about the bad side, and I want you to look at all of it. And there's even information that Michelle Obama said that admitted Barack Hussein Obama's home country was in America. And there's a lot of things out there. Then we look at Sheriff Joe Arpaio says Obama's birth certificate is forged. And of course, now that Obama finally admitted to the truth that he was foreign-born, you can rest assured that today's conservatives will remain silent. They don't want to deal with it. They haven't gotten to a point of realizing, oh, he didn't admit that. Come on. It's kind of like when you look at Tom Hanks, or you watch their crazy tweets and some of the things they're doing. Oh, he's just joking around about children, all these sex innuendos about kids, and dressing up as a woman doesn't mean he's a pedophile or he believes in sexual depravity or occult rituals. No, he's just joking around. So people will say the same thing about Obama. Now, like I said, I can't get to all this in this show. I only got about 10 minutes, but I do want to cover two things. About Obama, we're looking at whether he really was born in the United States. And how many people really believe that he wasn't? And that should give you an indication of where you're at. I kind of look at it as the truth scale. Where are you? If you're listening to this and you are a staunch conservative, staunch Republican, if you listen to this and you say, he's crazy, you're kind of over here. If you listen and say, well, maybe, then you moved up the scale. If you listen and say, there's really good evidence that this man was not born here, and this should be put out and discussed intelligently, then you're moving your way up, at least in this area of truth. Starting to really question your politicians and their motives. And once you get to that point, you go, well, why would he do that? Why would they allow this? And that's for another show, because that gets interesting. But many people don't get there. So we're not going to do it right now, because I'm sure there's a lot of people here who still don't think he's an American citizen, and they're just trying to be racist. He was black, you don't like it, so you're white, and you can't do that, because you're racist if you call into question his citizenship. Now, that's not all I want to do with Obama. Then the story started surfacing that he's gay. Not that there's anything wrong with it, but wouldn't that be interesting when you tie it together with this acceptance of the gay lifestyle in Hollywood? Could it be possible that he's also gay? And then again, many, many, many people are just going to look at that and go, God, that's impossible. No, come on. These people are wearing tinfoil hats. He's not gay. He's American president. Look at his stature. And he's never, wouldn't he? Everybody's come out. Everybody now says it's so great to come out if you're gay. He'd come out and tell us, wouldn't he? And what? That's what's going through the mind of people that can't even put into discussion this possibility. Then if you move a little farther on the true scale, you start reading articles by people who, wow, that guy says he's gay. And basically, A couple people that said he was gay aren't on the planet anymore, or the flat surface of the earth, however you look at it. Or were they just crazy? So you got this kind of thing where no matter if you get all these witnesses coming out and saying he's gay, people aren't going to believe it. He's not going to even question it. He's not even going, occasionally he'll say a joke about it, but he does exactly what the Tom Hanks, Steven Spielberg group does when their people come out and say they're pedophiles. They ignore it. They don't answer it. He doesn't bother either. And the question becomes, how much information is out there that he is gay? So, knowing my time limits here, we only got 5 minutes. I'm not going to get into all of those, but we're going to do that on another show. We'll start on it tomorrow. But I do want to move to the most respected family in this country, and the woman in this family is Michelle Obama. And let's just lay some groundwork here. Michelle Obama got a free pass with the mainstream media. Whatever she did was great. And she was the first black first lady. She handled herself with grace. She handled herself with intelligence. She's a very smart woman. She backed causes that were great. And the mainstream media loved her. Okay? Now, even if you were a Republican back then, you didn't criticize the First Lady. That was the First Lady of the United States. So even 100% of the left and right wing in America were behind the fact that you don't criticize the First Lady. Now that's changed with the First Lady of the United States now. And now you got half the country calling her a whore, the other half saying she's a great, intelligent woman who speaks 12 languages. She's, Donald Trump's wife, etc., etc. But you're looking at Michelle Obama. The story started to surface that Michelle Obama was not even a woman, but a man. And that story got traction by who again? Alex Jones. Now, he pushed that idea, and because he pushed that idea, the mainstream media comes down hard on him. Now, also knowing that Alex hangs out with the mainstream media and these people. He hangs out with Charlie Sheen and all of these kind of people. So, there's something going on here. Now, whether he's Bill Hicks or Alex Jones makes no difference. They'll take this to extremes if he is, and many people will believe it. Many, many, many more won't. But when it comes to Michelle Obama being a tranny and Barack Obama being gay, whoa, this story got traction with Jones, the alternative media, and anybody who touches it is crazy. And, you will hear certain references on the mainstream media about it. Oh, did you hear? They say Michelle Obama is tranny. Oh, are they crazy? Oh, those are the same people that say Obama was in porn here and he's gay. But the question becomes, let's look at you right now. On the true scale, do you think that's a possibility? If you say, I'm crazy, Greg's crazy, or the people that say this is crazy, you're not even going to listen anymore. Now, if you move a little forward and say, well, possibly, but I don't think so. Then you go, well, there's so much evidence, I want to look into this, and I think this evidence should be put out on the table. So, okay, let's put some out there, knowing that there's so much criticism against it, that the people that are on the other side of the true scale aren't going to believe it anyway, but let's just listen. Real quickly, because we're going to get into this more depth tomorrow. Okay, I only got about 3.5 minutes, so what I want to do is preface this by saying Joan Rivers admitted that, said to the media that Michelle Obama was a tranny and Obama is gay. And then she was going she's an older woman, going into the doctor's office for some, they were saying just standard treatment. And 30 days later, she was dead. So let's just listen to what she said. And this was all over the internet. All over the place. Let's listen. It's only about 39 seconds. Let's listen to what Joan Rivers, who has passed away, says about Obama and Michelle.
Ms.
Rivers, how are you? You made a ton of news officiating the wedding in New York yesterday. Is this like a new cottage career move for you?
I'm so excited.
Good.
And I should do very well because I don't charge.
And do you think that the country will see the United States will see the first gay president or the first woman president?
We already have it with Obama, so let's just calm down.
Got it.
You know Michelle is a
I'm sorry, she's a what?
A transgender. We all know.
Oh my gosh.
It's okay.
And you notice what she says there at the end. It's okay. Okay. Well, she lived maybe, I think, was it 30 days after that she was gone. And the point being that she said Obama's gay and Michelle is a tranny. And we already have those in office. So what are we talking about? It's okay. Now, again, many people are going to say Joan Rivers was old. She died from in fact, there's been a malpractice case settled by the family, I think in 2017, against the doctor. And then they're going to say, oh, she is just one of these Hollywood people, and she was joking around. Or if she wasn't, she didn't have evidence. You know, what better way to joke around? Same thing. And then they'll say, wow, is it, if you move a little, and people that believe that aren't going to go any farther, and label Alex Jones and the rest of people that wanted to do some research on it as crazy. Tinfoil hats. And then if you move farther on the scale and you believe, well, maybe, but no, I couldn't. Then you move farther and you say, well, I got to check into this. And once you start checking into it, you see a lot of reasons to believe that maybe she is a tranny. Not only in the way she handles herself, the body parts, things like that, but even in statements made by Barack Obama himself, which we will get into tomorrow, so come back. If you haven't heard about this, I'm sure that many of you have, but it plays right into the hand of this new normal. Everything is normal now between, there's no difference between a man and a woman, and this sexual depravity with pedophile children is okay, and just get with it. Back tomorrow on the Investigative Journal.
The book of Revelation says, the spirit of prophecy is the testimony of Jesus Christ. This is at the very heart of FirstAmendmentRadio.com. In that spirit, we have created the Prophecy Reality News app for all of your mobile devices, streaming First Amendment Radio 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Available for your Apple, Android device, and smartphone, absolutely free. Get the Prophecy Reality News app installed today so you can listen to First Amendment Radio wherever you are. The Prophecy.
Since the beginning of time, kings have sought it, nations have fought for it. It has been traded, it has been borrowed, it has been purchased, it has been stolen. There's a reason for it. To secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and to our posterity. Invest with the security of gold and silver. Call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188 or visit discountgoldandsilvertrading.net. Listen to Financial Survival with your host Melody Cedarstrom right here on FirstAmendmentRadio.com at 4 p.m. Eastern or 1 p.m. Pacific Time. Visit discountgoldandsilvertrading.net or call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188. Toll free 1-800-375-4188.